everybody. It's Justin. Welcome back to Faith 180, the podcast. If you're tuning in for the first time, this is part 2 of our conversation with Courtney and Jess. So be sure to check out part 1 if you haven't already. In this episode, we'll be picking up where we left off, diving deeper into conversation. It's going to be a great discussion. So let's jump right in.
So I want to say something.
Sure.
Don't think that there's, show up to church, lean into God, he leans into you, and then there's some magical thing that happens and then poof. Connecting the dots is you have to do all the things.
Yep.
And that includes Jesus.
But you have to do all the things for yourself because God is not interested in you doing all the things for the sake of doing all the things.
Correct. Yeah.
So he doesn't care about performance. He wants genuine heart.
Yeah. And I got connected, for me, it was a small group. And I've mentioned this before, but it was the ruthless elimination of hurry. And that really helped complete honesty, really helped calm my brain down. To start to process things, to start to look at Jesus as a human, a historical being that existed and walked the earth, who time after time evidence suggests did the things that the Bible says he did. And that's the first time I understood a relationship with God, which helped me understand wholeness with God. I think that's
outside of a random text for me.
Yeah. That book, for anybody that's listening, is super easy to read, super fast to read, and it basically explains how God or Jesus eliminated hurry in his life, and by doing the same things, pick the longest line in the drive-thru. When's the last time you did that? Right? Nobody thinks to do that because we're all in such a hurry. And when you put your phone down, sit in the drive-thru line, and you have time to talk to God because you're not doing anything else. It was crazy. That was one of our challenges, was to, pick the longest drive-through line. And what a difference it makes when you just stop and enjoy time more, if that makes sense. I mean, that's how Jesus walked around, was very slowly. He wasn't driving a car. They walked or rode donkeys from place to place. He was a carpenter. My dad's a carpenter. Works with his hands. There's a relation right there.
Yeah.
So when you start to, humanize Jesus as he was, you start to understand how he found peace. I mean, he wasn't living through easy times. Let's be honest. There was turmoil. There was war. He wasn't floating around on a chariot.
It's just thinking on something that you were saying about, taking the longest line to, take the time to be with God. And I'm just thinking about just everything in today's modern society. And I think AJ even talked about it this last Sunday, that everything is designed to occupy your time so that you're not alone with God.
Yeah.
Correct. Everything.
Do you know what someone
distraction.
said? Do you know what one of the ladies in my small group said? And I thought, oh, this hit hard. She said, if you go to other countries, you can walk. She's done some traveling. You can walk through other countries and you can actually feel palpable spiritual warfare. Places where demonic presence is there, you can feel it. She said the devil doesn't have to try that hard in North America to be intertwined in spiritual warfare. Kind of sounds voodoo-y even for us to even talk about in North America, because he doesn't have to utilize any of those weapons because we're too busy being distracted.
We're easy targets.
Yep.
It's mere convenience and distraction that can take us off a random path. And I thought, oh,
true.
This is something I realized recently, just how tight of a grasp it has on people. And parts of me, I don't think I'm innocent of media consumption. It's everywhere.
What's wild to me, what really opened my eyes, was when I closed social media, was going through the whole, hey, like you said, I never read the book Ruthless Elimination of Hurry, but I think I subconsciously did it, got rid of some of the things, to occupy your time. And I remember the first time we went to Halifax and I didn't have social media, just paying attention to everybody just on their phone all the time. Like that's our society in North America. Like you have 30 seconds to kill. What do?
Yeah.
Stare in the black mirror.
Jesus was not distracted.
No.
And he spent time out in the wilderness just fasting and
for 40 days.
Yeah, and being with his father.
Yeah.
It's tremendous, and there's historical accounts of that. But I mean, if you look, I don't want to talk politics, but I don't know if this is politics. This is more sociology. But if you look at just like the average American family, and if you look at church statistics, more now than ever, people are not turning. It's easy to be distracted, and people are going to church less. That's well known, and I think we all need a little more Jesus.
Well, our entire, as we're talking, but our whole North American culture is anti-community. And I'm not just talking anti-biblical community. I'm talking anti-community as a whole. Because, what do? You grow up, you turn 18, you move away from everybody, and you start your own family from scratch with no one there. When everybody else in society stays in small communities and, takes a village to raise a child, right? We don't do that here in North America, and we're all very much on our own and distracted and just so easily taken down wrong paths because we don't have the communal support unless you're going to church and actively looking for it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I saw Courtney nodding when I said about the whole.
I think of other cultures, and we're gonna have Tanya on from World Hope, and that'll be the end of the first half of season 2. And what I find fascinating about like even that culture, Sierra Leone, is the sense of community. Like even though they don't necessarily have wells, they walk to the water source they have together. They protect each other. We don't do that in North America.
No.
But one of the things that sparked a lot of that was post-war, in order to drive the economy up. What they did was like prior to that, if a blender is an easy example. If your family had a blender and your neighbor needed a blender and they didn't have a blender, they borrowed your family's blender. But to fix some of the economy, it's just better if everybody has their own blender. And so the convenience of everybody having their own blender has isolated us from even getting to know someone as close to us as our next door neighbor. Nobody asks anybody even for a cup of sugar anymore.
Yeah,
we've had new neighbors in our backyard for 8 months, and I don't even know who they are. I've never even seen them. I've never even knocked on their door.
It's high time you knocked on their door, Tom.
Yeah.
But here's the thing,
Bring
though.
some
You might
cookies
knock
over.
on their door and they might look at you like,
who the heck are you? Why are you
oh,
here?
Yeah, that's true.
Well, they put a gate up, so we can't even cross into their yard anymore.
I don't know who my neighbors are.
So
I know one of them, and we get eggs from them all the time. But
our old neighbors, there was actually there's a hedge. I say our backyard neighbors, but they're it's our backyard. Like our backyards adjoin to each other, and there was a hedge, and there was a pathway between the hedges that our kids would walk through. And the first thing this new family did was put a gate up.
No.
So,
but
I do know.
Do not pass go. Do not collect your 200.
I do know who our other backyard neighbor is. It's actually Wendy from the church, and she's like, "Oh, hi, backyard neighbor!" Every time she sees us.
Love it.
Yeah, I have some good neighbors.
I want to say a couple things before it leaves my brain. Just anytime, like what you said about I had a kid and then my focus changed. I think for every woman, every time they birth a child, there is almost this new birth of who they are as a person. You have to re-get to know yourself and who you are as a person every time you experience that. And I want to say that out loud because there are probably women who are going to listen and they need to hear that, like, it's okay if you don't recognize yourself. It's okay if you don't know who you are or what you like or what you don't like anymore. And it's okay if you need to take time to figure that out, because in a way, that forcing of selflessness that a newborn brings, that a child brings, it's important to rediscover who you are in all of that. So no, you're not isolated in that. And I think women as a whole need to hear that to give themselves grace to find that. It's super important. And second of all, I think it's okay if you were not emergency coordinator. I think it's totally okay if you were treading water. There was probably a large part of you that wished you had an emergency coordinator in that moment. And I think that's a way that, again, fortunately or unfortunately, Jordan and Kelsey were fortunate to have. As much with my own personal mental health struggle and journey, when you've lived that for a large chunk of your life and then you are mentally healthy, you can start to see the red flags sooner. And so I just, like, kudos to you for treading water and trying to get an entire family to where they needed to be and making the best decisions with the crap cards you were dealt.
She will never be the one to pat herself on the back, but she is the strongest woman I've ever met in my life because of that situation.
She had to be.
She had to be.
Because she friggin' had to be.
Yeah.
Yeah, I can ditto that on my side. I won't
100%.
I won't speak for her, but yeah, I think she would agree.
So, you're welcome. So,
Are you guys going to start your own podcast, 180 Faith?
180, yeah.
I knew this was going to happen.
No, 180 Faith. We'll do Faith 180.
We're finally going to get emails, but they're going to say, "Hey, you two
start your own podcast.
Get off the podcast and let those ladies talk every week." Yeah. Don't say the email this time, Tom. Don't let people know the email.
Faith180crew@gmail.com.
I want to put a couple summary thoughts behind it. If you are a support person and you are dealing with somebody who is in sort of a mental health emergency state, it is the first thing that you can do is get a plan of action together with a healthcare professional and create boundaries for everybody. That's the first thing that you can do for everybody involved. And if you're somebody who is struggling with mental health, but you're not in an emergency state, because I think there are probably far more people who fall into that category. I'm treading water. I'm not in an emergency yet. One of the biggest things you can do is go find genuine community. Community. Not being isolated and not being alone. And
that's
being
what
able
helped
to say,
me.
Yes, being able to say some of those ugly things out loud, no fear or no judgment, really takes away the power they can have over somebody. And it can take somebody who might be on the verge of being in a mental health emergency and turn them into someone who can start, processing, thinking, making good choices towards the better community.
Yep.
Yeah. Those are really good points.
I immersed myself in it. I even told the church, like, hey, if you need something, there were nights I was at the church painting because
he was on the chair team, which is something I never thought I'd ever see my brother do.
Oh yeah, I did join the chair team. That's right.
You did. You were on the chair. I would text you and go, "Where are you?" And you're like, "I'm setting up chairs." And I'm like, "What do you mean? I didn't even know a chair team existed."
Yeah.
But here he was.
I was super behind the scenes.
Yeah.
Those chairs you sit your butts in.
There's a team.
There's a team, man, and they need volunteers. This is a free advertisement for Brett Smith's chair team. If you're listening and you have your Saturday nights and you're just like, I got nothing I want to do.
And I want to be around people.
Yeah, I need a community of people that are putting chairs together. Listen, you can't find a better community. So I'm telling you, free advertisement, Brett. We love you, buddy. Brett's been on the podcast.
Yeah, we
Hopefully
needed to
hopefully the
subtitle that
chair team
episode.
grows tremendously. We think God is going to bless the chair team.
Yeah, no, that's anything in closing either one of you want to say?
I
know.
told them, I was like, you just got to keep me here. And yeah, I was there all the time doing stuff.
Yeah.
I painted Brett's office, and I'm not saying this so people give me credit. Like, I just wanted to be at the church because it's a good place to be.
Yeah, I was the same way. I'm like, hey, tech stuff, whatever you need, I'll be there.
I was sweating to death and just painting away. And, my wife was like, when are you coming home? So I got to paint the walls of the gym. I'm doing the Lord's work.
Yeah.
And no, I did not paint the walls because I thought, God was going to gift me. That is not the case. That's not how God works.
So just to kind of wrap up. Go ahead, Courtney.
I think what happens from there is when you're in genuine community and you get a really good hard look at authentic Jesus. That's
Hashtag authentic Jesus.
Hashtag authentic Jesus.
Like, that's where it changes, because you're not going to talk somebody into a change. You're not going to talk somebody into Jesus. You're not going to talk somebody into going into community. It's all these subtle, changes is, if it sticks, is usually subtle and determined. And they do. You get this authentic look of who Jesus is, and that's where it pivots.
And it doesn't take a theologian to catch the theme of community in Jesus's life. He was always surrounded by people unless he was spending time with the Father.
Right.
And then in silence and solitude. But when he wasn't in silence and solitude, which is a great practice, by the way, he was in community. And we've talked about this before, an earlier episode on this season, where community wasn't necessarily the focus of the churches I grew up in. It was community, but it was the community I was in.
And how often were people let into that community?
Yeah, it seemed like it was always the same people. And that's not a knock on that. That's just that's how it was. Some people find that community very comfortable. For me, I needed a different community.
I just think for me, authentic Jesus came when I moved in with my grandmother between years of university. I was in my early 20s. And it was like an old school house where the heat went up through the grates in the floor. And so I could hear her at 4, 5, 6 in the morning, whenever she'd get up, praying, sometimes for like an hour. And she was naming her kids and grandkids by name to God. And I was working a summer job. I'd come home and she'd fold my clothes. I was 20 years old, but she would still do my laundry, fold my clothes, and leave them out for me at supper time in a pile to find when I got off work. And that hit different. I mean, yes, your grandmother can fold your clothes and can pray for you, but everything that she did just screamed that she knew who Jesus was, that she had actually experienced who Jesus was. And it wasn't in this very loud way. It was in this very soft, subtle way. You would see authentic Jesus. And it just, when you get close to that, just makes you want to have a piece of it too. And like in the gospel, it says that, like the woman who chased him down the street just to touch the hem of his garment, because she believed that just the hem of his garment was enough to be lit on fire for him.
Yeah, she always had like, I don't know how many Bibles she would have filled up in her lifetime, but Courtney, you know the answer to that, but always Bibles next to her all the time. In the car, super devoted woman. I've never thought of Grammy that way. You're certainly painting a picture of an angel, in my opinion. I just had that image there while you were talking and realized that she's probably protecting all of us.
But I think that's what happens when you get in community. You get in community and you find those people. You find those people who have experienced Jesus so deep that it makes you just want to find the hem of his garment.
And this is interesting because I would say her sister as well just knows the Bible inside and out. I would say for certain she's experienced the same things. The irony of it is, I think their intentions, they were all in community way back then. I mean, they all had nothing. If you wanted eggs, it was because the guy next to you had chickens and you had blueberries and you traded your blueberries for chickens. I mean, my dad was tipping out houses back then. But you could also run into anybody's kitchen and they would feed you. If your kid didn't come home at midnight, you didn't care because he was in somebody's house, on somebody's bed. When's the last time you let your kid run out of the house and stay at somebody's house? I mean, those people lived in community. So I don't think there was any intention to the early 2000s where it just kind of seemed segregated, because those people knew genuine poor community, like borrowing toilet paper type of stuff, Great Depression type of stuff. That was when community was at its strongest. So when we talk about my grandmother, and I know my grandfather Bud, they didn't have a lot. I mean, Courtney can speak to this probably better than I can, but they lived off the land essentially back in the 60s.
Yes, accurate. That tells a story about, I think it was carrot soup. Carrot soup.
Carrot soup. I know rabbit stew. They ate a lot of rabbits.
I think it was just carrots and water. That's all they had. But Grammy called it carrot soup so that the kids would eat it, but Dad wasn't buying it. We had to sit there to eat it.
And we're talking the 60s, like late 60s. Think like rural Canada, things weren't great. Certainly, it was the manufacturing era. I think Grampy worked at a clothespin factory making wooden clothespins.
Yep.
And I don't know if they got paid to buy clothespins but it wasn't much. So It's just fascinating that it feels like in those times of community, those people got to see Jesus.
I think that's an interesting parallel for sure. Like you said, Great Depression era community, and that's when they were the closest with them. So
yeah, because you didn't have nothing.
Yeah, you had nothing to distract you.
Not a thing. You couldn't buy nothing.
Nope. Yep. Put up.
But I mean, in an odd way, that's also what you two have experienced. When there was nothing left to distract you, when you had come to the wits of yourself.
100%.
I think she just got the Segway of the Year award.
She gets a trophy.
You've got good segues, Tom, but that was
yeah.
She tied that together with a pretty bow.
Exactly.
Yeah, when you see absolute nothing,
that's when everything is,
and there's nothing else to live for. That is when
everything's brightest.
You start to see everything.
Yep.
And my prayer is that nobody has to get to that point. That they'll see that acceptance is not through the things of the world. It's through Jesus. Salvation is through Jesus. That for me has certainly been the cornerstone, I guess I would say. My encouragement is to lean into God, and he will lean in and reveal himself. That's what he does.
It's like this past Sunday, when AJ was preaching about the biblical peace with God, like step one is forgiveness of the past. And then step two is acceptance of the new reality. Step three is the invitation of a new life. And I feel like for me, that's where I'm at right now. Like I've gone through some of those steps now. Some of those steps I still have to do every single day, but these things happened, and I know you've really struggled with step one. And I have too. And
Same.
sometimes even now, even though you and I are in a good place and we've accepted our new reality, we renewed our wedding vows on our 10-year wedding anniversary in a church with a pastor.
Which is
Whereas
10 years ago.
before, like when we were first getting married, it was like, no way, Jessica, we're not allowed having that. But
No
like,
pastor, no church.
we accepted our new reality, and we have this invitation to a new life, which is your step 3 for biblical peace with God. And I think we're there. For me, sometimes it's difficult. I mean, I struggle with that every day. And I think a lot of us do, because we're constantly going to have to forgive ourselves, others, and things that we've done in the past every day.
Can't have step 2 and 3 without step 1.
Yeah, that's
Can't have step 3 without step 1 and 2.
Yeah, that's what AJ had said.
It's
But
like
do you know who else-
rocking a new pair of running shoes.
But do you know who else knows that?
I bet it's Jesus.
Is it
Well, on-
We're gonna go with C, Jesus.
Do you know who else knows if you don't have step 1, you can't have step 2 and 3?
We have voted, and we are also going with C, Jesus.
No.
Well, that sucks.
Wrong.
Can I phone a friend?
Are you ready for this?
Us?
Yeah, are you ready?
Yourself. Yeah.
The devil.
Oh, that guy.
The devil knows you can't have 2 and 3 without 1.
And he
And
will
if he
keep
can
you
keep
away.
you at 1, it is the easiest way to impact the kingdom. Easiest way to impact the kingdom, because let me tell you something.
You're right.
And this is important. This is important. People who have, where God has written these glorious redemption stories, you stand such a shot at making kingdom impact. And the devil frickin' knows it. And if he can keep you from forgiving yourself, it is such an easy thing to do to stop 2 and 3.
I never even thought of that.
I didn't either until someone much wiser than me told me. I gave 10 years being ineffective for Christ because I could not forgive myself. Even though I knew Christ had forgiven me, I couldn't forgive myself. And then somebody looked at me and said, who gives you that responsibility? Who gave you the responsibility to hold on to something and be accountable for something that he said he paid for?
That's been such a repetitive theme in my life lately.
I was just about to say.
Like, and the fact that the sermon on Sunday was all about that.
You and I have been talking about this for over a month now, personally, as well as on here. But why is it that neither one of us accepts it?
Yeah.
I think it's because he knows he's got you where he wants you.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because let me tell you, as someone who is on the other side of it,
You know, the devil's greatest trick was convincing the world that he didn't exist.
That's from The Usual Suspects. Kevin Spacey's character, Kaiser Soze, said that.
It's so true.
I don't know what it. Well, yes, I get what you're saying now. I'm just saying, as someone who's on the other side of that, right? You don't see it, and you don't think it, and you think you've convinced yourself it's you. It's you. But really,
Yeah, I'm not worthy, but like, who am I to say if I'm worthy of anything?
right. The reality is if only
That's God's
Jordan
job.
was, if only Jordan was born, or if only Tom had been born, Christ still would have come for you. So why do you?
I'm trying to play God, thinking
Right.
that I can.
Right.
Oh, there's There's something to chew on.
Mhm.
Yep.
If I don't forgive myself, I'm playing God because I'm made a decision that I'm not worthy of forgiveness.
And he already paid for that.
That is basically submission, but to the wrong party.
Right. Because he already paid for that. He already said you're worthy. He actually said you're the most worthy.
What did he say to the criminal on the cross, Jesus?
It was because you've accepted me, you will live eternally with me and my Father. I don't remember
Yeah.
verbatim.
Yeah. Of all the things he could have said,
Yeah.
he was still being Jesus. Hashtag authentic Jesus. He did not change for one moment. He stayed true
I
to the
also
Father.
think I've had to spend time reading the Psalm where David repents of his sin. Because God calls David a man after his own heart. But if you actually look, David did some really messed up stuff. He killed a dude, stole a dude's wife. But in the end, God calls him a man after his own heart. How does that work?
And didn't
Except
Moses murder somebody?
Moses did murder somebody. But this is what I mean. This is like when you actually look at the canon of scripture and you start looking at who God chose to use for people, they are some of the best redemption stories. They're not likely candidates.
Okay. So this is the most interesting podcast episode I think we've ever done.
I agree.
We've been on a trail here, and it might be part 1, part 2, but
Nope, here's all the marathon. This needs to be one.
Here's a thought I had the other night, and I texted my spiritual counselor about it, and he seemed to agree with me. We hear the story about the woman at the well, okay? And the woman's at the well in the afternoon because she's ashamed, essentially. I believe she's a prostitute. And instead of going to the well at night when it would be much cooler, she exerts all of her energy at the hottest part of the day because she knows she won't run into anybody. And she runs into Jesus at the well. And one of the things that came to my mind is like, what if that story is less about her and him, and it's more about the well itself and what we fill the well with? And if we filled our wells with social media and other things that grab our attention, then the devil's won. But if we fill our well up with Jesus and the Father and community, and well, then we're going to keep going back to that well. That's the well that never runs dry. That's authentic Jesus. So, I think it's obvious that the woman at the well was broken. I think that's a great symbol for pretty much everyone in society. But one of the realities that hit me is like, what you fill your well with is what grabs your attention. And he's waiting at the well for all of us. We all have a chance to run into him at the well. That's the point of that story. Doesn't matter who you are, he's waiting at the well. We just need to fill our well with him, is my thoughts.
I think, yeah, like that's the perfect analogy. That, yeah, I've never really considered the story isn't about the two people, but the inanimate object itself.
Replace the woman with yourself anytime. But
yeah,
it's again.
Well, he says, I come to give you living water so that you'll thirst no more. So instead of this thing that you keep coming back to over and over and over, I come to fulfill that. And I think that's easy to say, like, oh, well, I think some people go, oh, well, that's the sin I keep coming back to. But for other people, it's not necessarily I'm going and I'm committing this sin. For other people, it might be, I won't release myself of the guilt of what I've done.
Yeah.
And as long as you keep going back to that, to pull from that, you're not convinced that what God has done it will sustain you. You're not convinced that it's forgiven, that it's gone, that he's living water enough.
Which again is playing God.
Right.
So if you keep going back to the well of self-loathing, self-pity, woe is me, can't forgive myself.
But here's the flip side.
You're pulling from that.
Right. And here's the other half of this coin. And I think it's important to hear this part.
is that when you truly release yourself of it and you realize he's forgiven it, it is gone, and you don't have to live in debt to that anymore, you get to go live in the freedom of Christ, which scripture talks about. And in the freedom of Christ, your redemption story gets to be heard louder than ever. And because of that, God gets to be glorified. And this is the sequence of events that AJ's talking about.
So that's complete
It's because-
submission.
Right. If you're still in this place where you can't be forgiven, well, if God can't forgive you, where is the glory to give?
You're giving it to yourself as the forgiver.
Right.
Mhm.
Right. If you can't
Mhm.
forgive yourself, then what you're saying is maybe God hasn't really forgiven you either. Because why does God get to forgive you, but you don't get to forgive you?
Mhm.
What gives us that right?
Right. And from that point, you miss the opportunity to give God glory for what he's done. And it's in that story. It's in the forgiveness. Like, you look at Paul. Paul was Saul before he met Jesus.
Mhm.
When he met Jesus, he turned his life completely around. He killed Christians. Like, we're not
Yep.
talking he just like accidentally one off the dude. He was part of a team that went out in droves and killed people. So why does Tom Hazelton or Jordan Hamilton's sin get to be deeper, graver, worser, more worse, whatever, than what Paul Saul did? And you're unworthy.
Like,
I'm passionate about it because I've lost 10 years not letting myself live in the freedom of Christ. And you've already worked so dang hard to give your life to him and to experience him and to be in his fullness. Don't let someone, especially yourself, convince yourself that you need to go put that old rag back on and live in grave clothes.
kind of funny because, like, thinking to myself, it's like, I haven't been doing that, but it's like, no, I have been. And like you said, I am robbing him of the glory. It's not, no, I don't think I am. I definitely feel I am. And like I said, I just find it funny that, like, this is what we have been talking about for the last couple months, but why can't we practice what we preach?
This episode is brought to you by coincidences. Coincidences. Things that constantly happen to Tom and I.
AKA the Holy Spirit.
Yeah, we've talked about this.
Jessica had a
Jess-
point, but I cut her off.
Jess, are you trying to talk? I just keep cutting you off.
No. I had a thought, but it's long gone. That's
No,
okay.
if
It
it
might come
comes back,
back.
just say it.
Yeah.
Yeah, casual episode. Turned very
Turn into the deepest one we've ever had.
yeah.
I'm not saying you have to use it. Like, you don't have to use the content on my thoughts, but
Oh, it's being used.
I'm a little further ahead in it, and I'm not kidding. I spent 10 years waking up every day telling myself that I couldn't be a member of a church ever again, that I couldn't serve ever again, that nobody would ever want me ever again, that all the things. Because if you commit sin so deep, so far, so whatever, God can't use you. It's kind of like what Jordan said, it's a really great tactic by the devil, because in a way he convinces you that that's just your thought pattern and your lot in life, and that it's not him.
Just you. Just you.
You know what? I'm just having a major realization happening here in real time.
Shoot 2 aspirin tablets. Sorry. What did you say?
I said I'm having a major realization in real time that.
Not a sponsor.
So a couple weeks ago, I was having a conversation with someone, and he has been telling me constantly, hey, you have a ton of kingdom potential, is what he keeps saying to me. Jessica knows exactly who I'm talking about. I'm not going to say names. I don't know if he wants me to say it or not. You have a ton of kingdom
Jebediah.
potential, because I've shared what's been going on, how I got to where I am. And he's resonated with what I've shared. He loves what I've shared. But he basically, not in these words, but he's basically telling me that there is something holding me back, realizing that full kingdom potential. And I know 100% full well right now it's step one.
I think so too.
And you know who else knows all of that?
The devil.
Yep.
My mind right now is blown to a million pieces. And I need to make a phone call with this individual tomorrow and have a chat, as well as another individual who I have identified as my spiritual leader in life. And it needs to happen now, because the longer it waits, the harder it will be, and the more it will twist and dilute.
And
Yeah.
like Tom, for me, this didn't look like a oh, the weight's off me, I'm released. And if it does for you, great. But for me, it was more of a waking up every day and telling myself, if there was only one person on the planet, God would have sent his son in place of that person for me. So I am worthy.
And not only that, thinking, who am I?
Yep. So I won't hold that anymore.
To deny that.
Yep. God has
Every-
stamped it on you.
Every day is a battle to wake up and forgive yourself
But it doesn't need
and
to
others
be.
over and over and over again, but it doesn't need to be.
Right. Because eventually what happens as you start declaring that truth about who God is, the Spirit will work in you, and you won't have to necessarily declare it as often because you will know. I am Tom Hazelton, and I'm a freaking child of God.
What translation was that?
The message.
Not a sponsor.
Oh, man.
Well, we've had some epiphanies tonight.
Yep.
What was it that AJ was saying in church on Sunday? He's like, you need to, or do I need to spell it out for you, church? And I had cracked a joke to Tom, and I'm like, actually, yeah, I need a flow chart. Oh, it was, you can't have, I'm going to do some actions. You won't be able to see it in the podcast, but you can't have peace vertically
Vertical piece. Vertical, yep.
with, or you can't have horizontal peace
Without vertical.
without vertical first. So
Yeah. Check
like
yourself with
you
Jesus first.
and Jesus first.
Check yourself before you rickety wreck yourself.
Yeah.
Yeah, I remember that now.
Yeah.
Yep. Yeah, and a part of that is self-forgiveness.
I mean, there's huge other story to like our life and what God's done and the redemption story he's written within our family as a result of all of this mind-boggling stuff. So I don't doubt it when somebody speaks into your life and says you have huge kingdom potential. It's a weight, and you will experience spiritual warfare like you never have before, because it's not just maybe you and God who knows that. The devil knows it too.
Get behind me, Satan.
Uh-huh.
I'm going to be up all night now.
No, if anything, it should.
No, like that's good. I'm going to be up all night.
Good luck with this
Yeah.
one, Justin.
Yeah, sorry.
We love you.
I mean, you could just cut it before all this. Like, you know,
This needs to stay.
It's been a ride. I mean,
but also,
we
like,
already took the roller coaster, so we might as well stay on it.
I think you're just living another faith 180. I think that's what you'll find is your spiritual formation is just continual 180s, where God grows you deeper into Him.
But wouldn't those be 360s into 720s into 900s like Tony Hawk at the X Games?
So
Too much math.
the 8 in our logo should have arrows like an infinity sign.
Ooh. How do we...
Don't you remember
Jessica.
the sermon where AJ was like,
Continual
here's how this
180s.
works. It was like a circle, and it was like you step out in faith a little bit, and then you doubt and you trust at the same time. But eventually God shows you that he'll pull through, and then he'll bring you to the top of that circle, and he'll get you to step out again, only this time it's bigger. And you might doubt, but you can doubt and trust at the same time. It's like this whole, like that's literally, it's just going to keep happening to you. And it's mind blowing.
Here I was pre-sermon, praying that the congregation would be able to put the pieces together to that puzzle, not realizing that I myself needed to do that. I find that very ironic. Not a coincidence, but yeah, I know one of the things was like, well, people understand this, and hopefully this helps in some way.
Here's hoping.
I
I've
mean,
had a lot of. Go ahead.
What better piece is there than to forgive yourself?
I've had so many revelations during this conversation tonight, and I was not expecting to have these. And I am forever grateful that this conversation happened tonight.
Yeah, you don't know what you need. Do you know what you need?
Yeah.
I mean, you could thank your wife. She brought up the entire sermon.
She did.
Yeah.
This conversation, we need to continue this conversation. Like, you guys are coming back on. This is happening.
So what a great conversation we've had tonight, Tom. I've got a lot to sleep on if that happens. Some deep stuff, some revelations. It's been a pretty good conversation.
It is
and
like
non-scripted, completely.
Didn't know I needed this.
We just kind of went into it, and one of the things I've talked about with a future guest is how we just kind of let the Spirit lead the conversation. I think he did that tonight, and I pray that happens for every episode. I don't know if somebody wants to close us in prayer, but I think that's certainly not a bad habit to break. Just super grateful that you both came on. It's 11:30 at night.
It's 2 hours past Jessica's bedtime.
Yeah, so I don't know if Courtney ever sleeps, but
Not anymore.
But it's been a great conversation, and we'll have to have a part 2 to this and continue it. And one of the things I did halfway through when we were talking, I stopped and just prayed quickly for this episode. So if you're listening to it and you feel like sharing it, pray for it. We don't know what type of impact we can make, but we said if we can help one person, then we're going to talk about it. So thank you guys both.
My pleasure. Dear God, I think out of everything, the heart posture of these 3 individuals. And I think you intimately know the heart posture of all of your children. And I think that that's so important because I think more than anything, they desperately want to feel forgiven. They want to feel that you have truly, fully, completely relieved them of this weight. And there's just something inside of them and in their brain that's causing them to doubt that. And we know how the enemy can use doubt. And so we declare truth. We declare that you have forgiven those around you, that you have forgiven them, that you know their hearts and what they're working through, and that you meet them there, and that you want nothing more than to see them free. Free. Because you write the best redemption stories. You get the glory, and the kingdom gets to grow because of what you've done, not because of anything we've done. So thank you for that. Thank you for that forgiveness. Thank you for that freedom. Thank you for the peace that brings. And let us wake tomorrow stepping into that fullness that we are worthy, we are forgiven and that we are free to live with big kingdom impact. In Jesus' name, amen.
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 We are
Thank you.
yeah. That we don't say this much, and if you like this episode, do share, do like, do subscribe. I think it's important.
Yeah, there was some stuff shared here tonight that a lot of people need to hear.
Well, bonsoirs.
Faith 180 is an independent podcast produced and hosted by Thomas Hazelton and Jordan Hamilton. Producer and editor Justin Goddard. Theme song Goodbye Ol' Me from the album First Things First, used with permission and performed by Consumed by Fire. Available on all streaming platforms. Visit consumedbyfire.com and follow the band on social media, linked in the description of this episode. Follow Faith 180 on Facebook or email us at faith180crew@gmail.com.